Hey everyone, and welcome back to TalkTensors. Something that's been on my mind lately is how can we really know if an AI is explaining itself properly? And I don't mean in some kind of technical way that only data scientists understand,
Right.
but in a way that makes sense to normal folks like you and me.
It's a huge question, especially these days when AI is making more and more decisions that affect our lives,
Exactly. Right.
particularly in fields like healthcare, finance, where the stakes are high.
Yeah, you don't want a medical diagnosis or like an investment strategy based on some algorithm you can't even fathom, right?
Exactly. You want to be able to understand the why behind those decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the paper we're looking at today tries to tackle this head on. It's called Virtual XAI, a user-centric framework for explainability assessment leveraging GPT-generated personas.
A bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, a little bit, but bear with us because the idea is really fascinating.
It is.
They're basically using these virtual personas, which are kind of like AI simulations of different types of users, to test how well different AI explanations are actually understood by various folks.
It's a clever way to make sure that an AI isn't just explaining itself to other AIs,
Right.
but to the actual people who need to use and trust these systems.
It's like imagine if your doctor said, okay, this is the treatment, it will cure you,
Yeah.
but then couldn't explain why or how it works.
Yeah, you'd probably be a little hesitant.
For sure. So that's the gap this paper is trying to bridge.
Exactly.
How do we make sure AI speaks our language, not just machine code?
Right. And that's a challenge that goes way back to the early days of AI research.
Oh, really? I thought this whole explainable AI thing, or XAI as they call it,
Yes.
XAI was like a new thing because of these super complicated deep learning models.
Right. It's true that deep learning has made the need for XAI more urgent.
Right.
But even back in the 70s and 80s, researchers were already thinking about how to make AI systems more transparent.
So what were they working on back then that needed explaining?
Well, they had these things called expert systems, which were designed to mimic the decision-making processes of human experts.
So like an AI doctor or lawyer or something.
Exactly. They would use rule-based approaches where the logic behind the system's decisions was encoded in a set of rules that humans could understand.
So you could actually see the step-by-step reasoning.
Yeah, it was all laid out in a way that was relatively easy to follow.
So in a way, explainability was kind of built into those early systems.
Yes.
But then along came machine learning, and suddenly things got a lot more complicated.
Right, especially with the rise of these deep learning models.
Yeah, with all those interconnected nodes and layers.
Exactly. They can achieve incredible accuracy, but their inner workings are often a mystery, even to the people who build them.
It's like trying to read the mind of a black box.
A very complex black box.
Exactly. So it makes sense that as AI got more powerful and less transparent, the demand for XAI would skyrocket.
Absolutely.
But how did we get from those early rule-based systems to this idea of using virtual personas to assess explainability?
Well, there was a whole evolution of techniques developed to make these black box models more interpretable.
Okay.
One of the early pioneers was a method called LIME,
LIME.
which stands for Local Interpretable Model Agnostic Explanations.
Okay, got to be honest, that sounds vaguely familiar. Can you remind me how it works?
Sure. So LIME creates a simplified model that approximates the behavior of the complex black box model, but it focuses on the vicinity of a specific prediction. So it's like zooming in on a particular decision and creating a simplified explanation for that specific context.
So instead of trying to explain the whole tangled mess of the AI's brain,
Right.
you just look at how it made this one particular decision.
Exactly. It's a way to get some insights without having to unravel the entire deep learning model.
Clever. But if LIME was one of the early approaches, what came next? How did the field evolve from there?
Well, another influential technique was SHAP, which stands for Shapley Additive Explanations.
Okay.
It's based on game theory and tries to fairly distribute the credit for a prediction among the different features used by the model.
So it's like saying, okay, this feature was really important in the AI's decision-making, but this other feature, not so much.
Exactly. And it does this in a mathematically rigorous way.
So it's not just saying this is important, but actually quantifying how much each feature contributed to the AI's decision.
Precisely. And that level of detail can be incredibly valuable for building trust in the AI's predictions.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So we've gone from these early rule-based systems to LIME and SHAP, all really important steps towards making AI more explainable.
Absolutely.
But how did we get from there to the idea of using virtual personas?
That's a great question, and it highlights a key limitation of those earlier techniques.
Okay.
While they were good at explaining individual predictions, they didn't always capture the nuances of how different people might interpret those explanations.
So an explanation that makes sense to a data scientist might be completely baffling to someone who's not as technically inclined.
Exactly, and that's where the idea of virtual personas comes in.
Go.
It's about recognizing that explainability isn't just a technical challenge, it's also a human-centered one. We need to consider how different people with their diverse backgrounds and levels of understanding will perceive and interact with AI explanations.
And that's what makes this Virtual XAI caper so intriguing.
It is.
They're bringing in this whole new dimension of user-centricity to the field of XAI.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we'll explore further as we continue our deep dive into Virtual XAI. So welcome back to TalkTensors. Before the break, we were talking about the evolution of explainable AI, or XAI, and this interesting idea of using virtual personas.
Right, and it's those virtual personas that make the Virtual XAI framework so unique. It's like they're saying AI needs to speak our language, not just its own coded language, if we're going to trust it.
Exactly. And in the paper, the researchers tested a bunch of different XAI methods across various data sets using those virtual personas. What they found is there's no one-size-fits-all solution, no single XAI method that reigns supreme in every situation.
So even with all the progress in XAI, choosing the best method is still kind of a guessing game.
Well, not exactly a guessing game, but it definitely depends on the specific data you're working with and the kind of explanation you're after.
Okay, I get that. Like you wouldn't use a wrench to fix a leaky faucet.
Exactly. It's about using the right tool for the job. And the virtual personas can help us figure out which tool works best in each case.
Okay, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on how those virtual personas actually help choose the right XAI method. Can we maybe walk through an example?
Absolutely. Let's say you're building an AI system for a bank to help decide who gets a loan.
Okay, a classic example.
Right. And typically you'd focus on finding an AI model that's really good at predicting who's likely to repay the loan.
Makes sense the bank wants to minimize their risk.
Exactly. But now imagine you have these virtual personas representing different types of loan applicants.
Okay, so not just looking at numbers, but also considering the people behind those numbers.
Right. So you might have a persona representing someone with a limited credit history, like a young adult just starting out.
Okay, someone who might need a loan to buy their first car or something.
Exactly. And then you have another persona who's maybe a small business owner applying for a loan to expand their company.
Got it. So we have different backgrounds and financial situations represented.
Exactly. And then you present the AI's explanation for its loan decision to each of these personas.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. Each persona, even though they're virtual, will react differently to that explanation based on their simulated background.
Precisely. The young adult might be totally confused by all the technical jargon about credit scores, while the business owner might be frustrated if the explanation doesn't consider factors like their revenue projections.
So by observing how these different personas react to the explanations, researchers could figure out which XAI methods are actually effective for different types of people.
You got it. It's like having a focus group. But instead of real people, you have these virtual participants who can represent a much wider range of perspectives.
That's so cool. It's like simulating how real people might interact with these AI systems.
Exactly. It's about making sure that the explanations are not just technically accurate, but also understandable and meaningful to the people who are actually using them.
I see. But in the paper, they also talk about using real-world surveys. Why are those important if they already have these virtual personas?
That's a great question. The real-world surveys help ground the research in reality. They give us insights into how XAI is being used in different industries, what challenges people are facing, and what kind of explanations they actually find helpful.
So it's like a reality check for the virtual world. They want to make sure their findings are relevant to what's actually happening out there.
Exactly. It's about connecting the dots between research and practice.
Makes sense. So all of this sounds really promising, but the paper mostly focuses on tabular data, like spreadsheet kind of data.
Yeah.
What about other types of data like images or text? Can Virtual XAI be used in those cases as well?
That's a fantastic question, and it's something that researchers are definitely exploring. The core principles of Virtual XAI, using those quantitative metrics, virtual personas, and real-world insights, could be applied to other types of data too.
But wouldn't you need to change things up a bit? I mean, explaining why an AI model identified a tumor in a medical image is pretty different from explaining why it denied someone a loan, right?
Absolutely. It's not a simple copy-paste. For images, for example, you'd need metrics that capture how well an explanation highlights the relevant parts of the image. And with text, you'd focus on things like clarity and whether the explanation tells a coherent story.
And the virtual personas would need different skills too, right?
Precisely. Instead of a financial analyst persona, you might have a virtual radiologist analyzing medical images, or a virtual journalist scrutinizing a piece of AI-generated text.
So the personas would need to match the specific domain and data type.
Exactly. It's about creating virtual experts who can provide relevant and insightful feedback.
So what we're saying is Virtual XAI isn't just a one-trick pony. It's a whole new way of thinking about explainable AI that could be applied across many different applications.
Exactly. It's a versatile framework that can evolve and adapt as AI keeps pushing into new territories.
Which is happening all the time these days.
Right. And as AI becomes more powerful, the need for explainability is only going to become more pressing.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've talked a lot about how Virtual XAI works and the different ways it could be used. But let's get down to brass tacks here. How could this actually be used in the real world? What are the practical implications for, say, healthcare or finance?
That's where things get really interesting. Let's start with healthcare, a field where trust and understanding are super important.
For sure, you're dealing with people's lives here.
Exactly. So imagine a doctor using an AI system to help diagnose a patient. The AI might recommend a certain treatment, but the doctor needs to understand why.
They wouldn't just blindly follow the AI's suggestions, right? They need to weigh the AI's insights against their own knowledge and the patient's specific situation.
Precisely. And that's where Virtual XAI can really shine.
Okay.
By testing different XAI methods with virtual personas representing both doctors and patients, you could find explanations that are effective for each group.
So a doctor might want a very detailed breakdown of the factors that led to the AI's diagnosis, while a patient might prefer a simpler, more visual explanation.
Exactly. And by providing explanations tailored to each user, you build trust and confidence in the AI system.
I can see how that would be a game changer for healthcare, especially as AI plays a bigger role in things like diagnosis and treatment planning.
Absolutely. It's about empowering both doctors and patients to make informed decisions.
But what about other industries like finance, for example?
Well, think about how AI is being used in finance these days to make loan decisions, assess risks, and even detect fraud.
Right, it's all over the place.
Exactly, but these are areas where transparency is super important.
Yeah, if you're denied for a loan, you want to know why, and you want to be confident that the decision was made fairly.
Exactly. Virtual XAI can help ensure that the explanations provided by these financial AI systems are clear, accurate, and, importantly, non-discriminatory.
So it's not just about protecting the individual, but also ensuring that the system itself is ethical and fair.
Precisely. And this benefits everyone involved. It helps financial institutions identify and mitigate potential biases in their AI systems, which is something regulators are increasingly concerned about.
It's like building a system where everybody understands what's going on and why decisions are being made the way they are.
Exactly. It's about creating a level playing field where AI is used responsibly and ethically.
Okay, we've talked about healthcare and finance. Any other industries where Virtual XAI could make a big splash?
Oh, absolutely. Criminal justice is a big one. AI is being used more and more in areas like risk assessment and sentencing recommendations.
Okay, so things that have a huge impact on people's lives.
Huge implications. And these are areas where there are already concerns about potential bias in the system. Bringing AI into the mix could make things even more complicated.
Right, it's a sensitive area for sure.
It is, but it could also be an opportunity to make things fairer. By using Virtual XAI to very carefully evaluate and refine the explanations provided by those AI systems, we could work towards a system that is more transparent and equitable.
So it's like we're using Virtual XAI to audit these systems and make sure they're not perpetuating existing biases or creating new ones.
Exactly. And it's not just about identifying bias, it's also about explaining the logic behind these AI-driven decisions in a way that's understandable to judges, lawyers, and even the defendants themselves.
So it's about making sure everyone understands the role AI is playing and feels like they have a voice in the process.
Absolutely. And that's ultimately what Virtual XAI is all about. Building trust and understanding between humans and AI so we can work together to build a better future.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But, there's another aspect of this framework we haven't really talked about yet. The content-based recommender system.
Right. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle.
It's like having a personal AI advisor, which sounds pretty cool to me.
It is pretty cool. Imagine you're a doctor, a loan officer, or anyone working with data, and you want to use AI to help you make decisions.
Okay.
But there are just so many different AI models and XAI methods out there, it can be overwhelming.
For sure, like trying to pick a new show to watch on Netflix. Too many choices.
Exactly. So this content-based recommender system is like having a friend who's watched all the shows and can tell you which ones are worth your time.
Okay, I like that analogy. So how does it actually work?
Well, you upload your data to this Virtual XAI platform. It doesn't exist quite yet, but we'll get to that in the novel notions segment.
Okay, so for now, it's a hypothetical platform.
Right. But imagine you upload your data and the system analyzes it, looking at things like the number of features, the types of data you have, the overall complexity.
So it's getting to know your data, its quirks, and what it's all about.
Exactly. And then it compares your data to this huge library of other data sets that have been used for similar tasks.
So it's finding data that's like your data's soulmate.
In a way, yes. It's about finding data matches.
Okay, so if the system finds other data sets that are like mine, and those data sets worked well with a specific AI model and XAI method, it would recommend those to me.
You got it. It's about leveraging past experience to make those recommendations. It's like having a team of AI experts who've seen it all and can tell you what worked well in similar situations.
That would be super helpful. It takes the guesswork out of picking the right tools for the job.
Exactly. It makes AI less intimidating and more accessible to people who aren't necessarily data scientists.
Makes it feel less like a secret society and more like something everyone can use.
Right, and that's really the core of what Virtual XAI is trying to achieve, making AI more accessible, understandable, and trustworthy.
So it's not just about making AI more powerful, but also about making it more human-centered.
Absolutely, and that benefits all of us, whether we're doctors using AI to diagnose patients or just everyday people interacting with AI-powered systems.
Okay, this has been a really great discussion about how Virtual XAI works and its potential impact. But there's one more big elephant in the room we need to address. Ethics.
Of course, that's always a crucial consideration with AI.
Right, as we develop these increasingly sophisticated systems, we have to think about the ethical implications.
Absolutely. And the cool thing is Virtual XAI actually helps us address some of those ethical challenges.
Oh, how so?
Well, remember those virtual personas we talked about? They can help us identify and address potential biases in AI systems before they're even released into the real world.
So it's like running ethical simulations using those virtual personas to play out different scenarios and see how the AI system might behave.
Exactly. We can test the system's fairness, see how it responds to different demographics, and make sure it's not perpetuating harmful stereotypes or making decisions that could have unintended negative consequences.
It's like creating ethical guardrails for AI using those virtual personas to keep the system on the right track.
That's a great way to put it. It's about anticipating potential problems and addressing them proactively.
And Virtual XAI also emphasizes transparency, which is another key element of ethical AI.
Absolutely. By making the AI's reasoning more understandable, we can hold it accountable for its decisions.
So it's not just about building AI systems that work well, it's about building systems that we can trust.
Exactly. And Virtual XAI is giving us the tools and the framework to do just that.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, how Virtual XAI works, how it could be used in different fields, and even how it addresses some of the ethical challenges of AI.
We've really explored the nuts and bolts of this framework.
Right, and I think it's safe to say Virtual XAI has the potential to change how we develop and interact with AI.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool that could help us build a future where AI is more transparent, more accountable, and ultimately more beneficial to humanity.
Well said. But before we get too carried away with all the possibilities, there's one more segment we need to tackle, novel notions.
Right, where we take the ideas from the paper and let our imaginations run wild.
Exactly. So get ready to explore some of the more speculative and future-looking ideas inspired by Virtual XAI.
All right, welcome back to TalkTensors. We've spent the last little while really digging into this Virtual XAI framework, a way to make AI not just, super smart, but also something we humans can actually wrap our heads around.
Right, and now it's time to shift gears a bit for our favorite segment, novel notions. This is where we take those cool ideas from the paper and see where they could lead us, kind of like a thought experiment.
Always fun to speculate. So what's got you thinking outside the box today?
Well, we've been talking about these virtual personas, these AI simulations of different types of users, and it got me thinking, what if we went even bigger? What if we created entire virtual societies populated by these AI folks?
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. A whole simulated world where these AI beings go about their virtual lives, have jobs, relationships, maybe even political opinions.
Exactly. And we could use these virtual societies as like a giant testing ground for AI systems.
It'd be like a massive social experiment, but with AI agents instead of real people.
Right. We could see how AI-powered policies play out in these virtual worlds, how they might impact things like wealth distribution, or even how susceptible these virtual citizens are to, say, AI-generated propaganda.
Fascinating. It would give us a way to anticipate the impact of AI on society before actually deploying it in the real world.
And ethically, it feels a lot better to run these simulations than to experiment on real people.
For sure. Of course, building a virtual society that truly reflects the complexity of our world is, well, a pretty huge challenge.
Oh, absolutely. We'd have to think carefully about things like diversity, power dynamics, all those messy things that make us human.
Right, but imagine the insights we could gain. It could revolutionize how we study the impact of AI on everything from our economy to culture to politics.
It'd be like having a crystal ball, but one that runs on data and algorithms.
I like that. Okay, what other novel notions are bouncing around in your head?
Okay, here's another one. What if we used XAI, not just to explain AI to us humans, but to actually teach AI systems themselves?
Whoa, now that's meta. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Well, we know that different XAI methods provide different kinds of explanations. Some are super detailed, others more high level.
Yeah.
What if we use those explanations to teach AI, almost like different learning styles for kids?
So instead of just feeding an AI a ton of data, we'd give it explanations that match its learning style.
Exactly. It'd be like personalized tutoring for AI. Instead of just memorizing patterns, they'd actually be learning the underlying principles, the why behind the what.
And that could lead to AI that's more adaptable, more creative, more able to think through new situations on its own.
Right. It wouldn't just be following instructions. It would understand why those instructions make sense.
That's a pretty powerful idea. Okay, I know this next one's going to sound way out there, but ever since we started talking about XAI, it's been in the back of my mind. What if this is the key to communicating with extraterrestrial intelligence?
Yeah, that's a cosmic leap. But hey, this is novel notions, right? We're allowed to go big.
Exactly. So tell me more. I'm intrigued.
Well, think about it. Alien languages, alien thought processes could be vastly different from ours.
Right. We might not even recognize them as intelligent at first.
Exactly. But if we can teach AI to explain itself to us, to bridge that communication gap, maybe we can teach it to explain itself to them as well.
So XAI becomes a kind of universal translator, bridging the gap not just between humans and machines, but between different intelligent species.
Yeah. It'd be the ultimate test of whether we can truly understand and explain intelligence, no matter what form it takes.
Mind-blowing stuff. Okay, we've been in the stratosphere of ideas for a while. Let's bring it back down to earth for our listeners. What are the big takeaways about virtual XAI? What should they walk away with?
I think the most important takeaway is this. Explainable AI. It's not just a nice to have, it's a must have if we want AI to be something we can truly trust and rely on.
Couldn't agree more. Virtual XAI is giving us the tools to make AI more transparent, more accountable, more human-centered, which ultimately benefits everyone.
And it's not just about these technical advancements, it's about shifting the entire mindset of how we develop AI towards one that prioritizes understanding and collaboration.
Right. We need to be building AI systems that work with us, not just for us.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into Virtual XAI. It's been an incredible journey exploring this new frontier of AI research.
Yeah, it's definitely got my wheels turning. There's so much potential here, and I'm excited to see where the field goes from here.
To all our listeners out there, if you're as fascinated by this as we are, we've included a link to the Virtual XAI paper in the show notes. Definitely check it out.
And please keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts, your questions, your own novel notions on social media. We love hearing from you.
Until next time. Stay curious and keep exploring the amazing world of AI with TalkTensors.
See you next time.